system in place to keep us in chains. By show of hands, who else is sick and tired of the same? 1% trying to keep us small, trying to keep us from getting out. Minimizing the struggles they've caused, saying we're not working hard enough.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the thousands in attendance and for the millions watching at home, DCK Productions proudly brings to you the greatest podcast in the world! The greatest podcast in the world? Suck it. No, you suck it. No, you suck it. No, you suck it. No, you suck it. I appreciate it if you both suck it. Suck it!
We really should stop this fighting. Otherwise we'll miss the fireworks.
There won't be any fireworks.
And here we go.
Welcome, everybody, to Suck It. I am the great and powerful King of Kings, Prince of all that is awesome, Derek. How the fuck is everybody tonight? It is a great start to a wonderful week, and I am stoked to be here. We're starting the week off with a fantastic guest, and we're going to kick it all week long. And Thursday, we kick off the summer concert series. You know, we can't go to concerts, so I'm going to bring them to you. I've got 20 bands, some national acts, some unsigned local acts, ready to play for you live nationwide, get a little bit of exposure for themselves, and also just bring some music home because you know what? We can't go see it, so I'm bringing it to you. So tonight on the show, we have a fantastic guest, but before we get to that, let me go ahead and tell you about other things we're going to talk about tonight. We're also going to talk about the untimely death of Kelly Preston and her battle with breast cancer, which she kept secret for 2 years. We're also going to talk about the untimely death and suicide of Lisa Marie Presley's son, and we're also going to go ahead and get into the fun of Will Smith's and Jada Pinkett Smith's stuff going on that they have. And then also, finally, after years and years and years and years of crap that they have, done, the Washington Redskins are changing their name. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But before all that, first, my guest tonight is an American author. He was also the publicist in the 70s and 80s for singers and bands such as Prince, Billy Joel, and Styx. He has published a book on Islam, the Muslim cult, the Mohammed Code, and autobiography, How I Accidentally Started the 60s, and 3 books on human evolution and group behavior, The Genius Beast, Global Brain, and the Lucifer Principle. Please welcome to the show, Howard Bloom.
Eric.
Hey, Howard, how are you?
Good. And you?
How's everything going?
Good,
you know what?
Good.
I couldn't complain. I can't complain.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, things are fabulous here. I'm enjoying this COVID lockdown. I know it sounds strange, but I can't go to the cafe where I write my books. I have a small community of friends there. Many of them come just to sit near me because it inspires them somehow because I'm such a goddamn fucking workaholic. And I miss all that, but the fact is, I'm doing so many things with so many people via the internet that it's a joy. It's a pleasure.
I feel you. This is my only job that I have. I mean, I do this show and I'm also a stand-up comedian, but I can't stand-up comedian right now. So, I only have this, but, I spend 12, 13 hours a day on the phone with people, on the internet with people, talking to you guys. And it's crazy. So I feel you. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right. Well, I'm having a good time too. And then there's the fact that, you have manic depression. I had chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis. And for 15 years, I was a prisoner in my bedroom. So for the first 3 years, I was in mourning because I lost my sense of human identity. I couldn't do any of the things that I'd imagined for my future. And it felt like everything I was as a human was cut off. And slowly I revived myself on this relatively new thing called the internet. That was 1988 to 1991, a long time ago, in the infancy of the internet. We didn't even have browsers in those days, much less the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
So when it comes to having relationships with other human beings, interfacing with other human beings on the internet, the internet saved my life. Human interaction, socializing on the internet saved my life. So I'm back to it now because of the COVID crisis, and it comes perfectly naturally.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself, because that's exactly how I feel. So, speaking of your life, I mean, you've had one hell of a life. I mean, just, when I first got the email about you, I was like, this name sounds familiar. And then I started doing some research. I'm like, oh, that's why it sounds familiar. Because I'm a big, music junkie. I've studied the music scene since I was 5 years old, and I've been involved in it ever since. I used to be in some bands back in the early 2000s, and so I mean, I love music, and I wouldn't give it up for the world. But the stuff that you have done is outstanding. So let's go ahead and just kind of, start at the beginning a little bit here. So in 1974, you were the head of public relations for ABC Records. So
head of East Coast Public and Artist Relations, right?
Yeah. So talk about that. Well, how was that experience?
Well, let's go back just a little bit further.
Okay.
Go right ahead. Even weirder. It's even weirder than you think. When I was 10 years old, growing up in Buffalo, New York, not a soul wanted me. My parents wanted to have nothing to do with me. God knows why. And the other kids wanted to have nothing to do with me. I was only good as a target. If you wanted to grab somebody's hat and throw it back and forth so the poor kid couldn't get it, and you wanted to humiliate somebody, I was your humiliee. And then one day in my family's big living room in Buffalo, I opened a book. I have no idea where this book came from. You know how you know the location of every book in your house because your parents never take them off the shelves and they're always in exactly the same place? This is a book that had never been on the shelves. I have no idea where it came from. And it said, the first two rules of science are these: the truth at any price, including the price of your life. And it told the story of Galileo. And fortunately for me, it told it all wrong. It said Galileo had been willing to go to the stake to defend his truth. Not true. He worked out a deal with the Pope, who was an old friend of his, for house arrest if he said that everything he'd ever published was false. But I needed the heroic version, where he was willing to go to the stake. And rule number 2 of science is look at things right under your noses if you've never seen them before, and then proceed from there. And it gave the example of Anton von Leeuwenhoek, who invented the microscope. So 2 guys reached out across a distance of 350 years to save my life, Galileo and Anton von Leeuwenhoek, and I got involved in microbiology and theoretical physics. And by the time I was 12 years old, I had compiled a bunch of scientific credentials. I had co-designed a computer that won some science fair awards. I had built my first Boolean algebra machine. I'd been taken off for a meeting with the head of the graduate physics department at the University of Buffalo, and we spent an hour discussing Big Bang theory, whether Big Bang versus steady state theory of the universe and the interpretation of the Doppler shift. And we came out of that meeting and he put his hand on my shoulder and towered over me and said to my mom, you don't need to save for grad school for him. Have that fellowships at any school he wants in North America. I mean, I'm sorry that he said North America. Oxford and Cambridge would have been nice too. But at any rate, and then the head of research and development for the company that made the super sophisticated valves for the first plane that broke the sound barrier and for the first plane that made it to the edge of space, the Bell X-1 and the Bell X-2, tutored me in outside the box science. I'm fucking 12 years old, for God's sakes. You wouldn't expect these things. And at 16, I worked in the world's largest cancer research lab and came up with a theory of the beginning, middle, and end of the universe that predicted something that wouldn't be discovered for another 38 years, dark energy. So the question is, how in the world did I end up working with Michael Jackson, Prince, Bob Marley, Bette Midler, Billy Joel, Billy Idol, Paul Simon, Peter Gabriel? And that's a long story. It's just that when I got out of undergrad school, so I graduated magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa, but in my junior year, something weird happened to me. The poet in residence, who thought I was going to be the next great poet to come out of NYU, said, Bloom, wait until everybody leaves the classroom, close the door, I need to talk to you. Derek, this did not sound good. So I sat down in the bawling out seat when nobody else was there, And he said, look, last year I asked you to be on the staff of the literary magazine. You never even showed up. This year, I'm telling you, you are the literary magazine. You're the editor of the literary magazine. You don't even have a faculty advisor. The minute you walk out that door, you're it. Now walk the fuck out that door. And so I walked out of the door looking incredibly confused. And another kid saw me, a kid I'd never met before, and said, you look disturbed about something. Can I help you? And I told him my plight. I'd just been named the editor of the literary magazine. And I hated literary magazines. You know, they have these pale blue covers that could put you to sleep. They have the worst typeface choices you've ever seen in the world on the cover of the opening pages and the cover. So if you took a literary magazine and you threw it into the most rip-roaring orgy you'd ever seen in your life, within 10 minutes you'd empty the room. That's how bad literary magazines are. So he said, look, if you could do anything you wanted with this magazine, what would it be? And I said, it would be a picture book. He said, okay, you've got your answer. So I turned it into an experimental graphics and literary magazine. And we made a splash. The first issue made such a splash on campus that Derek, imagine this, they doubled our budget. Nobody ever doubles your budget. Everybody cuts your budget. And the second issue, nobody would talk to me on campus, but I got calls from the art director at Look magazine, which was a big, glossy, full-color, twice-a-month magazine. It was wonderful in those days. The Evergreen Review, which was the leading bohemian magazine in the world in those days, the leading, well, it wasn't hippie yet, it was the leading beatnik magazine, and Boy's Life. What a combination. And they all wanted meetings. This is about, you're a college student. You don't even imagine that these things exist in your city. All you know is your university. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a total shock, when you get calls like this. So I graduated magna cum laude on Phi Beta Kappa, and just as the head of the graduate physics department had said, I had fellowships at 4 different universities, one of them really cushy, and I accepted Columbia University's fellowship. And then one day, it was the beginning of the summer, I tried to kill myself. That hadn't worked out too well. I was at loose ends. I hadn't found a summer job yet. I walked into the apartment of one of the artists that I gathered for the magazine. And the room was empty. There was no furniture. There was just he, his wife, and his child. They were all sitting on a wall-to-wall carpet, and they were all crying. So I asked them what the matter was, and they said, our phone is being cut off, our electricity is being cut off, our furniture has been repossessed, and we're about to be evicted from our apartment. And I said, but you're a fucking genius. Your work is bloody amazing. Let me put your work in a portfolio. Let me take it out for 2 weeks. I'll get you enough work to pay your rent, and then I can find a summer job. And the end of the summer, and he poked in the art of a couple of his friends from Boston who had all come down to New York City hoping to found an art studio. And I started taking the work out. By the end of the summer, I had gotten New York Magazine interested in doing a feature story on us, but I hadn't sold any artwork. And something else was going on. I realized, let's go back to when I was 13 years old. When I was 13 years old, I realized, when I was 12, I realized I was an atheist. I put off acknowledging that realization because I had a bar mitzvah coming up. And it was the first party I was ever going to be invited to in Buffalo, New York, and there were going to be presents. So you can't turn that down. And an atheist can't be bar mitzvah. So I put off all acknowledgement until I was finished writing the thank you notes for the presents. That took 2 months. And at the end of August, I was able to come out of the closet of my own mind and say, even to myself, I'm an atheist. Well, then the high holidays came, and my parents tried to drag me to the synagogue. And I was holding on to the frame of the car on Richmond Avenue, the street where the synagogue was. And it was a sturdy American-made blue 4-door Fraser automobile. So it was a nice, sturdy door frame. And my parents were literally tugging at my ankles, trying to drag me up the street like a sack of meat. And I had a sudden realization. Since there are no gods in the sky and there are no gods under the earth, are there gods in this picture? Yes, there are. Where? In my parents. In the absolute conviction, the total passion with which they are trying to get me to the synagogue. And if those gods are inside of them, they're inside of me. Now, look, Galileo took an instrument that was designed for horizontal viewing. It had it was a tube, and it had a lens on this end and a lens on that end. And it was called a spyglass. It was a brand new military instrument because it was designed for looking on the horizon and seeing. The Dutch designed this, and seeing the troops of the Spanish, or the Dutch enemies, coming up over the horizon before they realized you'd spotted them. And Galileo had the audacity to take this horizontal instrument and turn it up to the heavens. Now, what's wrong with that? A very simple thing. That's God's underwear. That's the underside of God's living room rug up there. You don't peek up God's underwear, for God's sakes. Plus, everybody knows what's up there. Aristotle told us what's up there. Aristotle said the perfect form is the circle and the sphere. So obviously everything up there is a circle and a sphere because it's God's territory and God is perfect, right? Well, that's not what Galileo found. He found a lot of lumpy looking stones up there, which was a total shock and a surprise and changed the total relationship between mankind and nature, at least the nature of the stuff in the sky. And then Anton von Leeuwenhoek was a draper. So he imported fabrics to Holland and he used a magnifying glass to look at the fabrics and see how fine the weave was. And he had the audacity to take that lens and turn it down and look at pond water and discover that it was teeming with invisible animals, which we shared this earth with ever since we evolved as humans 200,000 years ago. So I suddenly realized Galileo turned the lens up, Anton von Leeuwenhoek turned the lens down. My job was to turn the lens inside and find the gods inside of us. So I have been in search of the ecstatic experience, that experience that connects us to the forces of history, ever since I was 13 years old. And when I had all these grad school fellowships, I had a sudden realization. Grad school looked to me like Auschwitz for the mind. Why? Because I was in search of the ecstatic experience, and I'd be giving paper and pencil tests to 22 college students in exchange for a psychology credit for the rest of my life. And how many ecstatic experiences, how many experiences of the gods inside are you going to see with 22 college students filling out a paper and pencil test? Zero. So for the rest of the years of my life, I would be separated from the phenomena that interested me the most. I wanted to experience these ecstasies. I wanted to be able to explain these ecstasies. So there I was trying to get work for this band of artists. And I suddenly realized I've been outside of pop culture my entire life. To me, that's been a foreign territory. That's the territory of the kids who beat me up. I was into Rachmaninoff, Bartok, Beethoven, Stravinsky, the fine arts, all of that kind of stuff. And now I realized I had a periscope position to actually see my way into the dark underbelly where new myths and movements are made, to see my way into the territory of the gods inside, to see my way into the territory of the ecstatic experience. So I called Columbia University and I made an excuse and I said I won't be showing up this year. And I continued with the art studio. Well, 3 years later, I'd been on the cover of Art Direction magazine. I had invented a new animation technique for NBC TV. My art studio had done all of the artwork for 7FM stations when they changed to a risky new format called progressive radio, album radio. And I'd begun to learn about rock and roll. Going up to ABC. They had a promotion person who just took me under her wing and schooled me on rock and roll. And one day she said, we're having a concert in Studio B. Would you want to come? And I said, sure. So she gave me 2 tickets and I took the artist who was the genius who'd been bawling on the floor with his wife and his baby with me. And it was a piano player. And we sat in the 27th row or something like that. And my artist made an utter fool of me. He got to his feet for the whole concert. He was whooping, he was hollering, he was yelling, he was whistling. I didn't want anybody to know that he was with me. It was humiliating. And the piano player was extremely good. But they made a live album of this event. The piano player's name was Elton John. And in listening to the album ever since then, and in performing myself, when you are performing, you're a stand-up comedian. You perform to the people who are most alive to you in the room, the people whose pupils are widening and are into what you are doing. If there is somebody in the room who is just feeding you energy, feeding you enthusiasm, it fuels you. And that's exactly what Peter Bramley, my artist, was doing for Elton John. Peter Bramley helped make that concert what it was. That album is still a classic today. And then I landed the National Lampoon, this brand new magazine, as an account for my studio. And it was really me and one of my artists that the publisher was hooked on, that he really wanted to see. But there was an artist that Peter Bramley had stuffed into the portfolio when I started to take his portfolio out at the very beginning, whose art I found nauseating. To me, it just wasn't art at all. And he pulled off a coup. He said, look, if we can kick Howard out of the studio, we've got this big monthly check coming in now. Why should we be giving him a percentage? So they kicked me out of the studio. Several of my artists left with me. That non-talent, the person whose work nauseated me, took over as the art director of the National Lampoon. He wrecked it. He did 7 issues that were absolutely abysmal, and they lost the account. And the artist who I'd stepped in to save, who'd been crying on the floor with his wife and his child, he died of alcoholism at an early age. It was a big mistake to throw me out of the studio, a big mistake. But it was a blessing for me. Because one day, because I had started writing for magazines, look, when I was 12 years old, something very important happened to me. A girl in my 8th grade class turned her eyes at me, and that had never happened in my life, Derek. And something even more startling happened. She made eye contact, and that had never happened in my life. And she said, I told my mother you understand the theory of relativity. And I couldn't confess to her that I didn't. So I got on my bicycle as soon as school got out, and I pedaled to the local library where the librarians knew me better than my mother does. And I said, give me everything you got on relativity. And they threw 2 books at me, a great big fat book and a little tiny skinny book. And I pedaled home as fast as I could and started to read the big fat book, because I'd learned at that point in my life that if you put yourself through something really hard and you think you don't understand a word, if you get all the way to the end, by the time you've finished, you've learned something, you understand something. But 8 o'clock at night came around. I'd been reading this book for 4 hours. It was all equations. I don't understand equations. I'd only gotten to page 50, and I realized I've got 2 more hours before my mom puts me to bed. And then by then I have to understand the theory of relativity. So I chucked my pride. Then I went to the little skinny book. And in the little skinny book, Albert Einstein had an introduction. And in the introduction, he said, it was as if he grabbed me by the shirt and put his nose up to mine and said, schmuck, listen up. You want to be a genius? It's not enough to come up with a theory that only 7 men in the world can understand. To be a genius, you have to be able to come up with that theory and then explain it so clearly that anyone with a college or with a high school education and a reasonable degree of intelligence can understand it. In other words, Albert Einstein, when I was 12 years old, said to me that to be an original scientific thinker, which was the only role in life that I had any chance at, you have to be a writer. And you have to be not just any writer, you have to be a superb writer. You have to be a writer whose work people cannot put down. So while I was running the art studio, I also had a designer, and she and I were designing my clothes. She was designing most of them. I was designing a few of them. And one day I walked into the office of an underground magazine called Rags, and I was wearing my clothes for my designer and myself. And I expected to walk out of the freight elevator, because it was in the garment district, and lay the portfolio on a table and hear the 4 women who were running the magazine, ooh and ah. But that didn't happen. They took one look at my clothes, their jaws dropped. They said, do you have more of these? I said, yes, I have a whole closet full of them. Why? And they said, because do you think you could write an article on these? Well, I had been dying to write for magazines because I needed to fulfill the Einstein imperative. I needed to show that I could write so clearly that anyone with a high school education and a reasonable degree of intelligence could not just understand it, but be utterly fascinated by it. So I wrote an article for them on how suits are man-made prisons. I mean, you know, walking down the street, try to catch a falling squirrel and save its life, and you can't reach your arms up, period, bound. And how in the world did fashion convince men to tie hangman's nooses around their necks and nearly strangle themselves every day? Every day. So I wrote an article about this, and they had me write another 175 articles and maybe a contributing editor. And then one of the other contributing editors started her own magazine, Natural Lifestyles, and she made me a contributing editor too. So when I was thrown out of the art studio, I was covering a parapsychology conference for Natural Lifestyles. And a kid saw me. I mean, I had a pad glued to my left hand at all times and a pen in my right hand, because I have no memory. So if I don't take detailed notes, I have no idea of what I've just seen. So there I was taking notes. Yeah, so I was taking notes like a madman. and this kid saw me and he came up to me and said, "Would you like to edit a magazine?" Derek, how often in your life does that happen?
Once in a million?
Yeah. So, and I said yes, because look, I was getting up at 6 a.m, going naked to the typewriter. It was an old Remington manual typewriter. You had to have the power of a sledgehammer just to hit one key. And I was pounding away at that typewriter until 8 o'clock in the morning for 2 hours, and then coming home and working until 11:30 at night with a pot of coffee. And I was getting tired. And if I could edit a magazine, I could write during the day. So I said yes. The only magazine I had ever edited was the Washington Square Review, the literary magazine. He set a meeting for me up with a publisher. Now, Derek, it's hard to remember this, but in the days before Google, in the days before search engines, you couldn't look up the name of the person you were about to meet with and figure out what the hell his magazine was all about.
That's very factual.
So I went into this magazine, into this interview, absolutely blind. It was a gorgeous office. It was at one UN plaza on the same plot of land as the United Nations. It had 7 windows overlooking the Hudson River or the East River or whatever river is on that side of Manhattan. And you could look 2 miles up the river and 2 miles down the river. It was an amazing view. And I had no idea of what we were doing an interview about, except that it was a magazine. And he said the magazine was called Circus. And I thought, okay, clowns and elephants, I can write about anything with sufficient research and if I love the audience. And he said, no, it's a rock magazine. So that's how I got involved in rock and roll. And at his request, I designed a whole new format for the magazine, and the new format worked. And we increased our circulation 211% in a year, if you can imagine that. And he went from being a man of modest means to a wealthy man almost overnight. It was astonishing. And Chet Flippo one day, Chet Flippo was one of the founding editors of Rolling Stone. He created Rolling Stone's New York office. And he sent me a manila envelope by messenger with 6 pieces of paper in it. And I took out these 6 pages of paper and I read about this Rumpelstiltskin-like character hidden away in a converted broom closet with a Remington manual typewriter, who had created an entirely new magazine genre, the heavy metal magazine. Well, that was me. That was the format I had created. So these were pages from Chet Flippo's master's thesis at the University of Austin. He felt he needed to legitimate his role in life, and it was a history of rock and roll journalism. So then I was hired by Gulf and Western to found a public and artist relations department for its 14 record companies. And you would think I knew nothing about public relations. I'd never done it. But the fact is, for 2 years, I was getting calls from publicists. And I was receiving press releases from them, press kits from them, and I knew what worked and I knew what didn't work. So I started a public and artist relations department, and it was a strange thing. I mean, the president of our company had discovered just before I arrived that his son had leukemia, his 16-year-old son. And in those days, leukemia was a terminal sentence. So he came into the office at 9 o'clock in the morning every day. No record company president comes in at 9. They all have to go out and see bands at night. So they come in at 10 or 11 in the morning. But he showed up at 9. He had these giant wooden doors. He locked himself behind those giant wooden doors. We never saw him. He was researching the best researchers on leukemia, trying to save the life of his son. And he was probably drinking. Who knows? So our company was losing money. Now, the trick was everybody else was being told to shrink their departments and shrink their costs, and they were constantly allowing me to add to my staff. It was astonishing. And I never stopped to ask why. So one day we all came into there was another company that Gulf and Western owned. It was doing fabulously well in popular culture, and it was called Paramount Pictures. And they had a leader, a president, who we heard about he was spoken about in hushed tones of awe. He was spoken about as if he were the new Napoleon, but had 4 times Napoleon's power. His name was Frank Yablans. And Frank went to the guys who ran Gulf and Western and said, look, you've got this little pissant record company. It's losing you money. I'm making you lots of money. Why don't you put it under my control and I'll make it make money for you? So one day we all came into the office and there was a room that was the Xerox room. How did we know it was the Xerox room? Because when our secretaries ran out of Xerox paper in their Xerox machines, they went to this room and pulled more paper out of the boxes in that room. The light was never on. All we knew was that there were Xerox boxes in there. One day we walked into the office and that room was ablaze with light. And it turned out that it wasn't a Xerox room after all, that the Xerox boxes had been piled on top of something in the middle of the room. And that something was a conference table. And we saw that the conference table was, for once, visible. And there were chairs at the conference table. We hadn't known that. And at every single chair, there was a yellow pad, a newly sharpened pencil, and an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with a list of records on it. Records we had never heard of. We were going to have our very first staff meeting. So we all filed into the staff meeting, and Tony Martell, our president, took his place at the head of the table and gave us a lecture on how we should be saving money on yellow pads and sharpened pencils. And all of a sudden, we felt a presence enter the room in the entrance behind us. It was as if 10,000 lasers had gone off, 10,000 bolts of lightning had just been flung, and this man came in on a dark storm cloud with charioteers around him. And it was a 5'4" man. And as he walked down the length of the table, Tony Martell, our president, the further this guy got, the further Tony shrank and shrank and shrank in his seat until he finally shrank off of his seat, got off like a jellyfish, went to the seat next door. And the guy who had taken over was Frank Yablans, this legendary president of Paramount Pictures. And he looked at the sheet of paper with the list of records. He looked at record number 1. He looked at the first department head on his left, and he said, "You, what are you doing about this record?" Now, Derek, we had never heard of any of these records before. These are from phantom companies. And I'd heard about bullshitting on oral exams, but I'd never seen it. All of a sudden, I saw this brilliant, detailed story tumbling from the lips of department head number 1. And then Yablans pointed at department head number 2, and I saw it happen all over again. Another blazingly brilliant story about all the things that this guy was doing for a record he'd never heard of before. And then Yablans got to me. And I stood up and said, "Mr. Yablans, I'm not doing anything about this record. In fact, I'm not doing anything about any of the records on this list." Yesterday, we had a showcase for a girl from Brooklyn, 13-year-old girl. When she took to the stage, it was as if she grabbed you by the esophagus. She put her nose up to your nose, her eyes locked on your eyes. She had you like a trained dog. Pant, sit, shake hands, obey. And you obeyed her for the next 45 minutes. She utterly controlled you for the next 45 minutes. And I'm putting 40% of my time into this artist. Her name is Stephanie Mills. And Yablans walked out of the meeting in absolute silence. So as we were all filing out of the room, I mean, that was the end of our meeting. As we all filed out of the room, the vice president over my head grabbed my right arm so forcefully that I had the finger marks he'd left for the rest of the week on my arm. And he said, "You fucking none. If you ever do that again, you're fired." And I got to my office, and my secretary was standing outside my office door waiting for me. And she said, "You got a call from Mr. Yablans. He's gathering all of his department heads tomorrow at noon. He wants to see you, and he wants to see Stephanie Mills." And that was the beginning of my working with Paramount Pictures. Because whenever they were launching a blockbuster, Yablans said to his department heads, call Bloom, bring him into the meeting, let him do anything he wants, he will deliver for you. And it was true. I always delivered for him. So that's how I got into the film business. And one day, I had been brought into Gulf and Western by Seymour Stein, the founder of Sire Records, which Echo and the Bunnymen and Eno and a bunch of people like that. And Seymour is the guy who would ultimately sign, see if you've heard of her, Madonna. So one day Seymour walked past my office and he stuck his head in and he said, "Schmuck, if you're so smart, why don't you have your own company?" Well, you can criticize me for lots of things because the fact is I can't throw a ball, I can't use a knife and fork, I am utterly incompetent at most human things. But if you challenge me on "you're so smart," I have to defend myself. So eventually I went out and I founded my own company. I founded it on the coffee table in the living room of a guy who would become the president of Polygram Records and Atlantic Records, Danny Goldberg. And he said, "Look, I got an assistant. Why don't you pay half her salary? You can have half of her time." And that's how I started the Howard Bloom Organization Limited. There's no, look, when I was doing Circus Magazine, when I walked into that initial interview with the publisher, there were two guys in the converted office, the converted broom closet, where I would soon work. They were packing their stuff and they were leaving. So I was replacing two people. And when I left Circus, and Circus was making a lot of money when I left Circus, they replaced me with 5 people. There's no way in hell I ever wanted to have to do the work of 5 people myself again. And that's why I called it the Howard Bloom Organization. I had no desire to be the only thing in this company. I wanted to create an organization. And eventually our philosophy was radically different. I come from science. I don't come from popular culture at all. I was able to look over all of the standard things that are done in the record industry that are mistakes and see them as mistakes and invent new ways to accomplish the goals we had in mind. Plus, average publicists felt they'd done a great job if they got 6 press breaks in a month. Mm-hmm. I felt we'd done a poor job if we got you 60 press breaks in a month. I wanted 120 press breaks in a month for a very simple reason. Remember, I came out of psychology and neuroscience, among other fields. And you don't really register that you've heard a song or you've heard the name of a star until you've seen it for the 15th time. And then on the 15th time, suddenly it seems to you as if you had just seen it for the first time, not realizing that those other 14 times built you up to finally recognizing this name or hearing this song. So I had to reach you at least 15 times with the names of my artists. I had to reach you over and over and over again every single month with my artists, if my artists were going to become known quantities in your head. And because of the quality of the work we did, I never had to go out seeking clients. Clients came in and sought me. And so that's how I ended up working with the Jacksons and Prince and Bob Marley and Bette Midler and AC/DC and Aerosmith and Kiss and Queen, Run DMC, and Billy Joel and Billy Idol and Paul Simon and Peter Gabriel and Chaka Khan and Joan Jett and people like that, Run DMC and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. They all came to me.
Howard. Oh, wait.
So, yeah. So that's how I got into the music industry. Straight from science. Straight from science into the land of the human soul.
That is a hell of a story. I mean, you know, I've done a lot of research on you over the last week, or actually last month, I should say, since I got the first thing. And, you know, I've read it all, but you know what, to hear it from your mouth versus reading it on Wikipedia and reading it on other websites doesn't tell the whole story. And, you know, it's just one of those things. It's just like, wow, you know, I had read a story. I can't remember where it was at. I don't know if it was on Wikipedia or somewhere else, but you were talking to Prince's management and you had given them an idea for a different way that he should go to business or something along those lines. And whatever that conversation was kind of reshaped the way Prince went about his show and his music and everything like that. So the way I read it was, without that conversation, Prince would have never had the things that he did have. Can you elaborate on that story?
Yeah, let me tell you, first of all, in order to give you the background on this. So, Derek, imagine that you walked into my office and wanted to be my client. And I gave you the following lecture. Look, if you want me to fashion an artificial mask for you, if you want me to create an image, and if you want me to sit here like a guy in a plaid suit with a cigar in his hand, flicking the cigar and say, kid, I'm going to make you a star, I'm going to send you to my best competitor. I don't do artificial anything. If you're going to work with me, you have to recognize music is not an exchange of pieces of plastic. Music is not an exchange of money. It is not an exchange of downloads. It is an exchange of human soul. And if you're human soul, keep that in mind. And if you're going to work with me, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find the gods inside of you. Remember those gods inside of you from the time that I was 13 years old?
Yep.
And the time my parents were dragging me out of the car. So this is what I'm talking about. When you sit in front of a blank computer screen or a blank sheet of paper at 2:00 in the afternoon and you're on deadline to finish an album and you have to write a lyric, you know you cannot possibly write a lyric that day. In fact, you have no idea of how you've ever written a lyric in your life. And on a reasonably good day, by 4:00 in the afternoon, there is a lyric in front of you. I'm going to find the gods inside you that wrote that lyric. On a really good day, There's a lyric in front of you so perfect, it feels like it wrote itself through you. You had no choice. When you go on stage on a really good night, you see the pupils of the audience dilating. You see their eyes widening. You see their faces melting. You see them coagulate into one giant blob of energy. You see that blob of energy reach a pseudopod out to you and send that energy coursing through you as if you were an empty pipe. You have an out-of-body experience. You feel that you're on the ceiling watching all of this take place. You see that energy flow up to somewhere around your brain and be utterly transmogrified and flow back down to that audience and widen their pupils even wider. And their energy comes flowing back to you. It's a continuous feedback loop. For 70 minutes when you're on stage, you are danced like a marionette. You are danced like a puppet by forces far greater than you are, forces you don't even know. My job is to find the gods inside of you that danced you on stage. And when I find those gods inside of you, I'm going to introduce them to the hello, how are you, fine, thank you very much personality of everyday life that you're accustomed to. And I'm going to keep you true to those gods. And if this sounds like something of value to you, I will work with you. But I have terms. I'm going to spend 6 months studying you. Don't expect to see any results at all for 6 weeks. I'm going to read every lyric you've ever written. I'm going to look at every album cover you've ever done. I'm going to read every interview you've ever had. And then I will come out to meet you in your own environment with no handlers, no wives, no managers, no intercessors of any kind, just you and me. And I'm going to find the goddamn fucking gods inside of you. And if you're willing to undergo that and you put up with my terms and conditions, I'll work with you. So those are the terms and conditions that I laid out for Prince. And I got a phone call from Warner Brothers Records on the West Coast from an extremely articulate Harvard-level publicist who said, you're going to have a big problem here. Prince can't do interviews. We set him up for 2 interviews, and he wouldn't talk to the first interviewer, and he tried to strangle the second interviewer. So I made my demands, and everybody said yes. And they flew me to Buffalo, New York, which is ironic because that's my hometown. That's not Prince's hometown. But Prince had taken over the Shea Theater where I'd gone to see a movie when I was 11 years old and was rehearsing for his Dirty Minds tour. So I sat in the empty seats in the audience and waited for the rehearsal to end. It was a surprise. I had heard about black rhythm sections. Well, this is the first time I'd ever seen a black performer with a white rhythm section, not just a white rhythm section, a Jewish rhythm section. When it was all over, when the rehearsal was ended, Prince and I found a room where we could lock ourselves in, and we stayed there, and I interviewed him from 2 o'clock in the morning until dawn, probably until 9 o'clock in the morning. And I got Prince's story out of it. I got the story of the passion points, and the passion points, your imprinting points, are the roots of your soul. They are the roots of the gods inside of you. And I went back to New York City, and I put the whole story in chronological order so you could follow it with the passion points prominent. And I sent it back to Prince. And I said, here's what you're going to do. I'm going to set you up for 8 interviews a day, 3 days in a row. I want you to tell this story to every interviewer, no matter what question he asks. Turn it to this story, because this is the story you need to get across to your fans. And a journalist in that room is a megaphone, a microphone for you, through whom you reach that audience. And you can take a simple question, like most interviewers start with, how do you characterize your music? Which is one of the stupidest questions in the history of journalism. It's one of the most meaningful questions you can possibly ask. And if you answer with your story, that journalist is going to go home that night and tell his wife, honey, I'm brilliant. I asked this absolutely genius question. How do you characterize your music? And I got this amazing story out of Prince. And when you're in that room, you have to pretend you've never told this story to anybody else in your life. You will be tempted to say, as I just said to the previous journalist, no, you cannot say that. You have to wipe out every expression like that from your vocabulary. In the same way that when you go on stage, you deliver your best songs night after night after night as if you have never delivered them to an audience before in your life. That's what you have to do in these performances for journalists. And Prince, so we did 3 days of interviews in a row in New York City, 24 interviews or something of the sort, 24 interviews in LA, and Prince was perfect. He just needed that guidance, Derek. I mean, how do any of us know how to behave in a situation that's utterly new to us, if nobody guides us? And we certainly don't want to learn by making mistakes, because then you're going to make your mistakes with the Associated Press, Reuters, Rolling Stone. These are not good places to make your mistakes, not good places to have learning experiences. So
Absolutely.
Prince was so fond of that education in how to handle interviews that he called me out to Minneapolis because he had a new protege, Vanity. I don't know if you remember Vanity. She was drop dead gorgeous.
Yes,
One of the most beautiful women I've ever sat on a bed with in my life. And she was sweet as all hell. And he made me do the same thing for Vanity. Then I got a call. I had a back problem, and the back problem turned really serious, and I couldn't work in the office anymore. So I was working naked under my bed sheets here in an apartment. Look, my apartment is a very strange place. I dressed every day so that if I were called to a meeting with a record company president, I would be prepared. My shirts, my pants, everything was laundered. I had the pants. Originally, I had bought these velvet Newman jeans on King's Road in England, in London. And when they stopped making them, I had a tailor who custom made them for me, black velvet jeans. I had this outfit that was dressed to kill. But my home, I knew that working the way I worked 17 hours a day and 7 days a week and 8 years without any vacations, that eventually I would burn myself out somehow. And I knew that we were going to have to find some way of making money when I couldn't make money anymore. And I realized that that was probably real estate. So my wife and I lived like college students. Our furniture was all furniture that other people had discarded on the streets, and we had dragged in. My wife had brought 80 cats into the house at one time or another. They weren't all there at once. There was a maximum of 8 cats and 3 dogs. And the cats, cats sharpen their claws. So they shredded all the upholstery on the furniture. They tore off the covering. They tore off the stuffing. And all that was left was wooden frames with springs. So this home was a place I wanted no one ever to see. And all of a sudden I was stuck in bed and had to work from bed. And I got a call from one of Prince's managers saying Prince has somebody that you need to give your education to. And I said, but Jamie, I can't. I'm laying here in bed. And I can't get out of bed. She said, okay, fine. Give me your address. We'll be there at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So my block, in those days, my block was a treeless slum. And all of a sudden, this black limo came around the corner and cruised down the block and stopped at my house. And out of one door, the left door of the car, this beautiful blonde from California popped out. Her name was Jamie Shoup. She was part of Prince's management team. And out of the right-hand side came a person with a zoot suit so perfectly ironed that it looked as if he had a stylist in the car with him and an ironing board. And they walked up my 3 flights of stairs with dust bunnies so big they could swallow a human whole. And they walked into my apartment. My wife let them in. And dog number 1 goosed this guy in the zoot suit from the front. Dog greetings. I'll have to do all about your anal and genital areas. And the other dog goosed him from the rear. And he was ushered into my room where I was laying in bed. I had fortunately put on clothes for the occasion. And my wife had thrown a sheet over one of these heaps of wood and springs that had formerly been chairs. And that's how I did my education with Morris Day. And when Prince would meet somebody like, oh God, what is her name? Bonnie Raitt. So he would meet somebody like Bonnie Raitt. He would fascinate her. She would fascinate him. And he would say, you've got to call my publicist, Howard Bloom. So Bonnie Raitt and I would spend an hour on the phone talking without any idea of why Prince had put us on the phone together. But it was a privilege. And eventually I got to do it with Kristen Scott Thomas, who Prince had discovered in France, who's one of the greatest actresses ever. I mean, she's just amazing with a presence that's unbelievable. She would eventually get an Academy Award nomination for her role in The English Patient. Then she would get an Academy Award nomination for playing the mother in The Horse Whisperer. She has this incredible film called Salmon Fishing in the Yaman. And if you haven't seen it, you should see it. It's amazing. And she played Winston Churchill's wife in The Finest Hour 2 years ago. Amazing, amazing actress. And I gave her, the education. So that's how working with Prince was for the first 2 years. Then everything turned strange. There was another part of the speech that I gave you, and it came when I met you in your home or whatever your environment was. And it was, I will have to come back every year, because every year in the way you once turned from a baby to a toddler, and from a toddler to a child, and a child to a teenager, and those changes are as dramatic as the change from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Every year, your psyche is going to change. And that means the gods inside of you are going to mature and turn into unforeseen shapes. And I need to come and check with you every year to see who you are now and to bring you in touch with who you are now. Well, here's what I mean by bringing you in touch with who you are now. One day, John Mellencamp, who I put through this entire training, John Mellencamp called and said, look, I've been offered $1.25 million for Hurt So Good to be used for a ketchup commercial. Should I take it? And in those days, $1.25 million was real money. Today, it's pocket change in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
Today, it's about $7 million in today's money. And I said, John, what do you want to be doing 15 years from now? Do you want to be making music for your fans? Or do you want to be clipping coupons? Do you want to be just living off of the interest on your investments? And John said, I want to be making music. I said, okay, then you have to turn down the ketchup commercial. And here's why. Because you get up on stage and you go like this. And what you are saying to your audience and even to yourself is, it's as if there's a giant city with huge walls. Imagine the Jerusalem of Isaiah. And you're locked out. And even though you're locked out, and even though you look as insignificant as an insect standing outside those walls, when you raise your fist to say, I have a right to exist. Pay attention to me. I am as human as you. I have powers too. And if you accept the ketchup commercial, it's as if you slipped through the gates of those walls and you live inside of them now. And you no longer can say that on behalf of your audience or yourself. You are a part of the establishment. You are not a voice of rebellion against it anymore. And look, every teenager at the age of 11 and a half or 12, when his or her hormones begin to flow, goes through a process we call individuation. It means getting away from your parents. And you even begin to smell bad to your parents. And they begin to smell bad to you. And hanging out with your friends. But that makes you an outcast. Mm-hmm. You're a person who has not proven to have any value in the world yet. It's going to take you up to 15 years to establish an identity, to get a sense of control over your own life, to find your own mate, to find a place to live, to find a thing to do that you think is of value to your fellow human beings that they're willing to pay you for. And so when you are speaking with that fist outside the walls of the establishment, you're speaking on behalf of people, generation after generation, who are going through that experience from the age of 12 to the age of 28. They need you to articulate their feelings. So John turned down the ketchup commercial, and his manager, who happened to be Rod Stewart's manager as well, quit over his turning down the commercial. But did John do the right thing? You bet. One of the major problems with music and the entertainment world today is you have all these superstars. They are all going for every ketchup commercial they can find. They're all going for every commercial tie-in they can find to make money. Every one of those tie-ins is delegitimating them. Every single one of them is covering up the gods inside of them, even to themselves. And if they can't communicate, remember, music is an exchange of human soul. And if they can't communicate soul to soul with their audience anymore, their audience is being deprived of one of the most valuable assets, resources that we have, because kids grow up on their idols. They grow up on role models. And if they don't have role models who have genuine passion and authentic experience, they are being robbed of the thing that they need to have a sense of authenticity in their own lives. And because nobody is doing secular shamanism, finding souls, finding the gods inside in the entertainment business anymore, our kids are being deprived of anything genuine to hang on to. And that is intolerable in any civilization.
100%. And there's a lot of things that you said that really apply to what I do as well. So like one of the things that you were talking about just now was that when you were talking to Prince, you were like, you tell your story, regardless of the questions that are asked, you tell your story. And that's one of the things that are the polar opposite on the journalism end. You know, you're supposed to guide the interview. Don't let them take control, because if you let them take control, you're not going to get your point across. But the thing about it is, like, and I've heard many podcasters talk about this, journalists talk about this, you know, reporters, and it's like, why? That's a disservice to them. Your viewer is not coming on to watch you ask questions. Your viewer is coming on to watch them answer questions and talk about themselves. So
Right.
and I've learned that real quick. So, you know, this whole hour that you and I have been talking, I've said 3 questions. I've let you guide this interview, and that's how I do it with everybody, because they're not here to watch me talk to you. They're here to talk to me. And that's one of the things that I think I lose a lot of things, you know, like you said, they're losing those inner gods by letting other people dictate who they are. And you got to let yourself shine through. And that's what I try to do on this show. And I think you're speaking a truth that a lot of people need to hear.
Well, I have a friend, Paul Salmon. Paul Salmon, I admire him tremendously. He's a great explainer. He's the PBS NewsHour's business and economics correspondent. I watch him every Thursday religiously. And it turned out he wanted to have lunch with me, of all the strange things. It turned out he had read one of my books and wondered, who the hell is this guy? Where did this guy come from? I've never heard of this guy before. How did he come up with such an amazing book? That was the Lucifer Principle, my first book. And Paul Salmon, when we were having lunch, talked about people giving a stump speech. And you know what a stump speech is. A politician gave the same speech in 30 to 300 different towns. And the phrase had really never occurred to me before, but it stuck in my mind. And it just occurred to me literally a minute and a half ago that what I was training Prince in, what I was training Vanity in, what I was training Morris Day in, what I was training John Mellencamp in, was how to give a stump speech. But not just any old stump speech, the stump speech that told you who the fuck he or she was.
Absolutely.
So again, it all comes down to the gods inside. I entered the world at the age of 13 looking for the gods inside of us. At the age of 14, I heard there was a book called The Varieties of the Religious Experience by William James. This sounded like somebody right precisely on my wavelength. I found the book. It took 4 months. There was no Amazon in those days. When I read it, it was as if he laid a bunch of amazing delusional experiences out like in petri dishes on a lab bench for me and said, kid, I don't have the tools to understand these things in my lifetime. You're coming along 50 or 60 years later. You will have those tools. I leave this legacy to you to study these things. Well, these are the experiences my artists had on stage, experiences that you could call delusional, out-of-body experiences, the strangest experiences in the world. And one thing that William James did say, these experiences can be regarded as psychopathological, as mental illnesses. But in the hands of the right people, they are the engines of history. And that's what I was studying. I wanted to experience it from the inside, my own performance experiences. I've had at least one out-of-body experience and been carried out on the shoulders of the audience, which I never expected in my life. I'd never seen it done before. I've never seen it done since. And it's all about the gods inside. That's what my life has been dedicated to.
Wow. Man, you know, I have just sitting, like I said, you know, I could have read about you for days upon days upon days. But just, you know, sitting here and just listening to you talk about your path and everything you've done for everybody else has taught me so much, and you know, in the last hour. And it's an eye-opening thing for me, because, you know, I think I have it all figured out. Other people think they have it all figured out. And then they talk to somebody like you, and it's like, wait a second. All right, so I'm kind of doing the right stuff, but at the same time, I could be doing it differently and better. So what can I do to reevaluate who I am? And sitting here right now, that's exactly what I'm doing. You know, it's like,
well, there's one thing I should mention. There's a film coming out on the 21st. It's becoming available to the public for the first time. It's been doing the festival circuit. It's won Best Film at the Science Design Film Festival in California. And it's called The Grand Unified Theory of Howard Bloom. And the impact on the audience that I saw in New York City at the Doc NYC Film Festival was amazing. Every single person in that auditorium when it was over was glowing. And they had these huge smiles on their faces. There was something about it that had lifted them out of their ordinary selves. And one person told me he came and saw the film twice because he took notes, point by point, on things he could apply to his own life. And it's a 66-minute film by Charlie Hoxie, who is the winner of 3 Emmys. And apparently, it's a very powerful film. It's hard for me to say that because it's about me. But so if you want a sense of uplift in your life, this apparently does it. It's the Grand Unified Theory of Howard Bloom, the film. Yeah.
And I can, I always could use that uplift in my life, especially, coming off of what happened to me last week. So like I told you earlier, this is my job. This is what I do full time. However, up until Thursday of last week, that wasn't the case.
What happened?
Well, I got fired from my job that I was working at because of
oh my God, what was the job?
I'm not going to go into it because there's more of that. But because of the show, I was
right.
Fired. And because of the things I said and the belief system that I had and so on and so forth, people did not agree on the corporate level with me. Amazing. And on Friday morning, I was let go. So in the last 4 days, I've had to completely revamp everything about this show to try to start generating real money. Right. I've been generating pretty good money, but now I need to start generating real money.
Right.
And, so it's like what you're saying right now is like, so I'm starting basically over from scratch. Yes, I have, 10,000 listeners a day. And yes, I'm doing this and I have a PR team, but that all is meaningless unless I'm learning every day something different to apply to my craft in order to make me better. And in the last, 72 hours, again, like I said, my life has been completely turned upside down. And so it's like, where am I going to go next? And if I don't take the lessons that, I've learned from everybody else and the things that, Jesus fucking Christ, the things that you've said in the last hour, if I can't gather something in order to make tomorrow that much better when I'm talking to Soho Johnny or when I'm talking to so-and-so on Wednesday or, the band on Thursday or whatever the case might be. And if I can't learn from anything that you said, then I shouldn't be in this fucking business to begin with. And I am just in awe of you. And I am so glad to have the honor and opportunity to speak to you today.
Well, Derek, it's been an absolute pleasure. So hopefully I will see you again soon. And I wish you well in making the show, bring in money by the bushelful.
I'm hoping so as well. But like I said, Howard, it has been such an honor to speak to you tonight. And I hope that, my listeners get a lot out of it as well. And because I know I did. Terrific.
All right. Have a great night.
You too, sir.
All right. We'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. You have a good one now.
Okay. Thanks, Derek.
Bye-bye. Wow. Holy shit. So I need to digest all that. So and I hope you guys do as well. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll go to a quick commercial break and we'll be right back. Guys, I'm here to tell you all about the brand new revolutionary product from Manscaping today, the Lawnmower 3.0, a product that will not nick your sack and make sure that your manhood stays protected the entire time you are shaving. So do yourself a favor and go to manscaped.com and use promo code ShutUpCameron for 20% off the Perfect Package 3.0, which not only includes the Lawnmower 3.0, but it also includes Ball Toner, which helps prevent ingrown hairs. You get Ball Deodorant, which helps prevent chafing and man stank. You also get this awesome, sleek, stylish leather carrying case, all for $99.99. And when you use that promo code, you get 20% off. Also just released the Weed Whacker, the perfect nose and ear hair trimmer. So again, go to manscaped.com, use promo code ShutUpCameron for 20% off. Trust me, your balls will thank you. Guys, ever wonder how I get this manly beard looking so good? It's all because of Viking Revolution. And at Viking Revolution, not only can you get some great beard balms, but you can also get some great beard oils, as well as some awesome quick shower pads, which helps prevent you stanking up after the gym. Also, these great wet wipes, which help prevent, stanky after going doo-doo. And also some pomades and some other great products. all at Viking Revolution. So do yourself a favor, go to dcproductions.com/sponsors, click on the banner, and get yourself some of these great products. Viking Revolution. Join the revolution. All right, guys. And now I'm here to talk to you guys about my newest sponsor, someone that I'm very, very proud to have part of the Suck It Podcast family, and that is the BetterHelp company. What interferes with your daily happiness? Is something preventing you from achieving your daily goals? Like mine, Friday morning, something happened that turned my world upside down. May have been a blessing in disguise. I don't know. I'm still digesting it all. BetterHelp will help you assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. Connect you in a safe and private environment so it's convenient. You can also start communicating in under 24 hours. It's not self-help. It's professional counseling. Send a message to your counselor anytime. You'll get a timely response. Plus, you also schedule weekly video and phone sessions, all without ever having to leave the comfortableness of your home or some uncomfortable waiting room. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they can help you easily and find your counselors as needed. It's more affordable than traditional online counseling, and financial aid is available. The service is available for clients worldwide. There is a broad range of expertise available, which may or may not be locally available in most areas. Anything you share is confidential, convenient, professional, and affordable. So please go to betterhelp.com/SIPod. That's /S as in suck it, iPod, SIPod, to get 10% off your very first month. Again, that's betterhelp.com/SIPod to get 10% off your very first month. BetterHelp is a fantastic organization, a fantastic app that, again, you could do anywhere at any given time. And I love that about them. So please take a look at that. Please give them a chance. It's a fantastic offer. 10% off using that promo code. Again, that's betterhelp.com/SIPod. 10% off your first month. All right. So on to the rest of the night. Howard Bloom. Wow. The life he's had, we didn't even get to the other half of his life. We talked a lot about his music life and his publicist career, but guy's an amazing author as well and done so much cool shit. So please, take a look at some of his books that he's done. Excuse me. And also some of the other stuff that he's done as well, because that guy is an amazing, amazing man. And, like I said, I let him talk the entire time just because that's what needed. Because he has the right to tell his story. I'm just a media guy. I'm just the podcast host, the television host, whatever you want to call me. I'm giving him a platform to tell his story. And that's exactly what I did tonight. All right. So, on to some more fun stuff. So, as everybody knows, I'm sure you guys have seen it. There's been a lot of scandalous air quotes, because I don't believe it's scandalous at all. Stuff going on with Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith. She had a boyfriend, and a lot of people were accusing them of being in an open relationship or a polyamorous relationship. Or she was cheating on him, or there was a bunch of stuff going on. She did have a relationship outside of him and her and Will. However, they were, separated at the time, but now they're back together. But through all of this, there was something that came up. That was something that was recorded 2 years ago by Will Smith. And I'm gonna go ahead and play it for you now, but it's about helping happiness and self-happiness. And I'm gonna go ahead and play it for you now. This is from Will Smith's Instagram. And then we'll go ahead and talk about it.
So me and Jada was reflecting about love. And I asked her, I said, what does she think was, one of the biggest revelations that she had about love? She said that you cannot make a person happy. And I thought that was a real deep idea. You can make a person smile, you can make a person feel good, you can make a person laugh, but whether or not a person is happy is deeply and totally and utterly out of your control. I remember the day I retired. I literally said to Jada, that's it. I retire. I retire from trying to make you happy. I need you to go make yourself happy and just prove to me that it's even possible. And after we cracked the hell up, we started talking about, we came into this false romantic concept that somehow when we got married that we would become one. And what we realized is that we were two completely separate people on two completely separate individual journeys, and that we were choosing to walk our separate journeys together. But her happiness was her responsibility, and my happiness was my responsibility. And we decided that we were going to find our individual, internal, private, separate joy. And then we were going to present ourselves to the relationship and to each other already happy, not coming to each other begging with our empty cups out, demanding that she fill my cup and demanding that she meet my needs. It's unfair, and it's kind of unrealistic and can be destructive to place the responsibility for your happiness on anybody other than yourself.
So that is something that I've always, me and my wife have always, lived by, and that is a massive thing that, to hear somebody come out and say something like that is, pretty enlightening. Cause that's something I've known for years. But that's something I didn't know for a very, very, very long time. When I met my wife, my current wife, I was that serial monogamist, that I couldn't be happy myself unless I was in a relationship. I couldn't be happy myself unless I was with somebody. And that is what, eventually led me into a very, very disparaging marriage that, broke me in two, because, I tried for years upon years upon years to make this woman happy, and I never could. And she took out her unhappiness on me. And that was something that, took me a long time to realize that my wife, Christina, does not control if I'm happy or not. She doesn't. And I don't control what she makes, which makes her happy. If I make her laugh, great. If I make her smile, even better. If I make her feel warm and fuzzy inside, that's fantastic. But her happiness on a daily basis is not my responsibility. Her happiness is her own responsibility. And same goes for myself. Will Smith used a great analogy in that video I just played. Here's an empty cup, and you're walking up to somebody that you love and saying, here, fill up my cup with happiness because I depend on you. That is not how love works. And if you think that is, then you're in for a truly rough experience. I had to learn that the hard way. A lot of people have, but, something from somebody that has depression and bipolar disorder and, anxiety and stuff like that, I can't depend on her. That's not her responsibility to make me feel better. If I'm having a bad day, then yes, she needs to be supportive. But her job is not to take all my sorrows away. Her job is not to make me do that. That is my job. That is my own satisfactory, human feeling that I need to feel. Rolling over in the morning and seeing her face, makes me happy knowing that I have somebody love me. But what she does on a daily basis does not need to fulfill all my needs, does not need to make me feel any less happy or unhappy. And that is a very, very, very valid thing. And that is one of the things that, regardless of whether or not they're in an open marriage or not, they've never come out and publicly said that they were or weren't. you know, they can say that they were separated during the time she had a boyfriend or whatever the case might be. Nobody knows the truth except for them. But, you know, I have a lot of friends and a lot of other people, and I've done a lot of research on stuff like this, you know, and that's how people live their lives. A lot of people do, you know, a lot of people question, you know, the whole sanctity of, you know, polyamorous or open relationships or stuff like that, because they're like, well, you know, you should be somebody's everything. That's impossible. If that was the case, we wouldn't have friends. If that we wouldn't have, you know, all the other things in our lives that we have in order to meet our needs. No, we would just have one person all the time. You know, I wouldn't need my parents. I wouldn't need my brother. I wouldn't need my sister. I wouldn't need my best friend. I wouldn't need my dogs, my cats, my kids, nothing. This person right here is my everything. That is not how life works. Now, me and my wife are not in that situation. I'm just giving you a scenario based on what he's talking about. You know, I have my friends. I have my podcast. You know, I have relationships outside of me and my wife. You know, they're not the same as, you know, polyamorous or open relationship. I'm just saying relationships in general. You know, in order to be able to fulfill my needs as a human being. It is not right for anybody to put that solely on their spouse. It's not. And if you think that's exactly what you need to do, then there's something else going on internally inside that you need to figure out. I think Will Smith put out one of the greatest 2.5-minute videos, or however long that video was, on marriage and love that I've ever seen ever. That is a true testament to the man that he is. And that is 100% a factual statement. The cup that you carry around on a daily basis, that is your happiness or your feelings or so on and so forth, is not responsible to be filled up by your spouse. Period. And so regardless of what you think, they think, anyone else thinks about that couple or any couple and their relationship and how it makes them work and how they allows them to be together for as long as they have or anything else like that is not your business, because they have a system that works for them and in order to make themselves happy, not to make each other happy. If you wake up every day and your sole goal is to make your wife happy, then you've got something wrong and she's got something wrong, or vice versa. And what you're saying, you might be saying to yourself, Derek, you're out of your fucking mind. You know, that's not how love works, blah, blah. Great. If you've been together for 30 or 40 or 50 years and that's how you've lived your life, fantastic. More power to you. I'm just saying that there's other things out there that not everybody gets to understand. And what he said was so eloquently put that I don't think, you know, anyone could ever say he's wrong. Bottom line. All right. So moving on. No, I just thought that it was a really cool, you know, situation. And it's a really good eye-opening life, you know, thing for anyone that's been having issues in their marriage. You know, if you're not happy in your marriage, that's because you're not happy, period. That has nothing to do, it may not have anything to do with your wife or spouse or husband or, you know, whatever. It just may have to do with your internal struggles. But it's not necessarily always your spouse's fault, because their job is not to make you fucking happy. Jesus Christ. All right. So anyway, on to other things. Today, we found out about the death of Kelly Preston, who was the wife of John Travolta. She passed away today at 57 years old. And she died of breast cancer. And for the last 2 years, she's had breast cancer, and she's pretty much kept it to herself. Obviously, John knew, and maybe some immediate family knew. But she passed away due to her struggle with breast cancer, which is a sad reality. because she was a great woman who did a lot of cool things. And yeah. So here's a quote from John. She fought a courageous fight with the love and support of so many. So she began her career in the early 80s, often playing a young and sexy character, as she did in the 1985 comedy Mischief, where she was the shallow charmer the nerd dreams about. Then she went on to do a movie called Space Camp, where she wasn't so shallow. Her character, Tish, seemed to be a teenage Valley Girl type, but turns out to be a genius who plays a pivotal role during the crisis. Miss Preston aged into types of cute but smart adult roles, often identified with Meg Ryan. A breakthrough role was in 1988 comedy Twins, where she played Arnold Schwarzenegger's love interest. She met John Travolta in 1988, where they worked on the comedy Experts, released that year. They married in 1991. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go on a separate rant here for a second. So I'm reading to you guys straight from the New York Times. And I'm reading straight to you from the New York Times because what I'm about to read really pisses me the fuck off. And you may not see it, you may not care, but this is something that I feel is bullshit, and it's done way too many times in journalism. Okay. So right now they're detailing this woman's life and career, talking about who she is, something that her family is going to read. They're basically eulogizing her inside of their publication. Okay. And they go on to say, they married in 1991. She had a cameo with Mr. Travolta in the 2000 sci-fi flop Battlefield Earth. Okay. Everyone knows that Battlefield Earth was a shitty ass sci-fi flick, but did you really need to call it the sci-fi flop? In her article about where she died of breast cancer? Really? That's kind of insulting, in my opinion. And also, I do want to go ahead and point out, never once throughout this entire article, okay, did they ever refer to John Travolta as her husband? They repeatedly refer to him as Mr. Travolta. They said her name as Kelly a few times, but they only refer to him as Mr. Travolta. The entire fucking thing. That's kind of like the way I read it. Now, I could be completely wrong, and I might be overthinking things. I just might be that dickhead just to fucking make a fucking point. Whatever. Fuck you. My point is the way it reads is Mr. Travolta was, her. She was Mr. Travolta's wife, and that's how it read. It never read, her husband, John, or anything. No, it was Mr. Travolta. It was the way that it's just worded is very weird, and I don't appreciate it. So New York Times, try fucking harder when you're eulogizing somebody, and especially when you call one of her movies that she's in, a flop. It is pretty fucking bullshit. So whoever wrote this fucking article, let's find out. Who was this motherfucker? Austin Ramsey. Austin Ramsey, you're a fucking tool. And I will fucking tweet at you that you are a piece of shit. You should have had a little bit more care and concern when you were fucking writing this fucking article. Bottom line. I don't like the way it was written at all. And I read to it only for the sole fact that I could call it out, because there was much better articles that were written on this woman and much better articles that should be highlighted here, but I'm not going to read the same thing over and over again. I wanted one that when I first, because this was the first one I saw, this was the one that, my wife saw on Snapchat and sent to me this morning, because my wife does all my research for me and gives me the stuff for the monologues, and I kind of put it all together. But that is some bullshit. It really fucking is. A woman just lost her fucking life due to a horrendous disease that I almost lost my grandmother and almost lost my aunt to. And you're going to sit there and make sure that you point out the fact that one of her movies was a fucking flop. Jesus fucking Christ, Austin. Grow the fuck up. Austin Ramsey, I don't know if you work for the New York Times or not, or if you are just an independent freelancer. But either way, learn how to fucking eulogize somebody, because the way you just fucking did it is bullshit. Jesus fucking Christ. You know, you could put something in there along the lines of, you know, she made a cameo in her husband's movie, you know, this. Great. That would have been fine. But no, you had to add flop. Or you had to continually say Mr. fucking Travolta while referring to her as Kelly. Either way, a life was lost, a mother was lost, a wife was lost today. You know, you can feel however you want to feel about John Travolta and his views with Scientology and all the other stuff that's, his friendship with Tom Cruise, and that's all out the window at this point. I'm not going to talk about that, even though I just kind of briefly mentioned it. You know, a woman's life was lost due to something that we need to figure out a cure for. It can't get here fast enough, to where, breast cancer month. I mean, that's not, at this point, I'm sick and tired of saying, breast cancer awareness month. Fuck it. It needs to be breast cancer awareness year, because far too many women are losing their lives because of it. Far too many men are losing their, yes, men can get breast cancer too. You just don't hear about it as often, but still men get fucking breast cancer too. And the fact that it's 2020 and we still haven't found a cure for this is very, very disheartening. The fact that it's 2020 and we're still dealing with a fucking, as experts or quote unquote experts are saying, this is just a serious flu, disease and coronavirus. Fuck you. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm sick and tired of experts talking down to us and we don't fucking see. Florida had another fucking 12,000 fucking cases over the weekend. Jesus Christ, Florida. There's a reason why I fucking left your dumbass fucking state. Holy crap. We need to get our act together as a country. There are European countries, there are, Asian countries, all over the place that have made better strides when it comes to cancer research and other things like that, to where, and they're putting us to shame. We're supposed to be the most technologically advanced society in all the entire world. I call bullshit. No, we're the most fucking greedy fucking society in the entire world, because we live in a society to where makes more business sense to keep you sick than to cure you, because I make more money off you continually being sick on a daily basis than to give you this one drug that'll make you healthy. Breast cancer is one of the prime examples of that. Prostate cancer is one of the prime things of that. Coronavirus is now one of the prime things on that. I'm sick and tired of hearing people say, well, you can't compare us to Taiwan, or you can't compare us to, other countries that aren't getting as big of an epidemic as we are. Why? Because they're smaller? No. The reason is, well, they're not America. We do things differently here. That just fucking gave me a fucking aneurysm and a stroke all at the same time, to know that idiots like that even fucking exist. So yeah, we might have a bigger population. We might be spread out more than some of these other countries that have eradicated, or at least, dampened the effects of coronavirus. But can't we at least take a fucking lesson from their playbook? No, because somebody else fucking did it. We can't fucking do it too, because we have to be fucking different. We have to be fucking original, and we have to make sure that we do things our fucking way. Which is why people are dying daily because of cancer and fucking AIDS and fucking the coronavirus and all this other shit. Because we're too goddamn in our goddamn own heads and our political fucking beliefs in order to care about our fucking brothers and sisters who are dying on a goddamn daily basis. You'd rather sit there and bitch about, oh, they're taking away my freedoms by making me wear a fucking mask, but not give a fuck about whether or not somebody is dying next door to you. Grow the fuck up, America. Our brothers and sisters, black, white, Chinese, Japanese, Russian, Cuban, Puerto Rican, some, African, all of our fucking brothers and sisters are susceptible to these diseases. And unless we all stand up and fight again together, it's never going to fucking make a change, because fucking prescription companies and medical health professionals run this fucking country, and they would rather make sure that they fucking pat their fucking wallet than make sure that you have a fucking cure for what's wrong with you. Just fucking saying. No woman should die of cancer. No man should die of cancer. Period. And there's got to be a fucking cure. It's 2020, God damn it. There's got to be a fucking cure, but they just don't want to fucking give it to us. It's pretty sad that, an episode of Family Guy, and yes, Family Guy did an episode on this, and if you guys are ever watched it, you guys know it exists, that they've had to call out the government on that kind of stuff before. Because we all fucking know it's real. But we'll never find out for sure. And that's a sad fucking reality. That they would rather keep us sick than get us healthy, because they'd rather pad their fucking books. Wow. Just fucking wow. Lisa Marie Presley's son, Benjamin, committed suicide over the weekend. He was 27 years old. And here's some quotes from TMZ. Lisa Marie's son and Elvis Presley's grandson, Benjamin Kioff, I'm not sure how they pronounce his last name, has died of apparent suicide. Law enforcement sources tell us that Ben had died Sunday morning in Calabasas from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Not much is known about him other than the fact that he's got a super famous family. He's the son of Lisa Marie and musician Danny Koff, and his sister is actress Riley Koff, who's been in a number of indie and horror films over the years, including 2019's The Lodge. And of course, his grandparents are Elvis and Priscilla Presley. Ben has kept a low profile throughout the years, but one thing he's well known for is almost looking identical to his grandfather, Elvis, which he really does. And looking at this article here, Lisa addressed the similarity, saying Ben does look so much like Elvis. He was at the Opry and was quiet. Quiet was the storm behind the stage. Everybody turned around and looked at him over there. Everybody was grabbing him for a photo because it is just uncanny. He even wrote a song about it called Storm and Grace, because his middle name was Storm. He also was a musician. He struck a record deal back in 2009 worth $5 million. He's had a couple acting credits under his name as well, but aside from that, not much else is known about him publicly, and he has very few social media accounts. One of the last times he was seen out with his family was during Elvis's 40-year death anniversary during a vigil held at Graceland. He was only 27. Another one lost to suicide. I can't stress this enough. If you are feeling something, say something. If you're embarrassed, please reach out to BetterHelp. Like I told you before, go to www.betterhelp.com/SIPod for 10% off. There's always a way. You don't need to go to an uncomfortable waiting room. You don't need to, make countless phone calls from your insurance provider's website. They may or may not be taking cases. They may or may not fit you. There's options other than that. And that's why I've partnered with BetterHelp, because that's one of my main themes on this show is mental health. Everyone knows that. But reach out to BetterHelp. Reach out to anybody. Don't let suicide take your life too. So my hearts and thoughts goes out to the Presley family and everyone around you guys. So suicide is a selfish act, and all you do is really just put the burden on your family. In that article I was reading, it also said that Lisa Marie has been seen and as unconsolable. What exactly did they say? She's completely heartbroken, inconsolable, beyond devastated, but trying to stay strong for her 11-year-old twins and her oldest daughter, Riley. She adored that boy. He was the love of her life. I can't even fathom. I can't. If you feel something wrong with you, say something. Get some help. If you don't want to use my sponsor and BetterHelp, do something. But if you're listening to the show, you're listening to the show for a reason. I use BetterHelp. Give them a chance. Everything you say is confidential. You don't even have to use your real name. Go to betterhelp.com/SIPod for 10% off. Anyway, on to our last topic of the night before I go ahead and kick y'all out of my fucking house. No, I'm just kidding. So announced today, the Washington Redskins have announced that they're finally going to be changing that name. And the Navajo Nation came out and commended them that. It's one of those things that needed to happen. There was a lot of people saying, or a lot of companies that were pulling their sponsorship from them. A lot of people that were removing their sponsorship logo from their website, and even they were going to remove it from FedEx Field. FedEx was getting ready to pull their name from that as well. It's amazing what people have gathered and got together to go ahead and make the changes that they were going to make on this. Now there's two ideas out there, but again, these aren't coming from the team itself. It's coming from other people. The Navajo Nation, who came out today in support of what they said it's a little late, but they're glad they did it. However, what they need to do is they need to take something that they defamed. It's a racist name. I mean, bottom line, it was. But now what they need to do is they need to come out and basically say, okay, what did one of the or what did the Navajo Nation, or what did some of these Native American Indian tribes do for this country, and utilize that as their new name. So one of the suggestions that they came up with was using the Washington Code Talkers. So for those of you who don't know, I think it was either World War II. They used Navajo speaking people in order to translate messages back and forth across battlefields in order to make sure that the other nations couldn't figure it out. Everyone knows what happened with the Code Talkers. So that's one suggestion that they had. Instead of being racist against them, let's go ahead and honor them in doing that. I do love that idea. Another one that's come up a lot lately, and I've seen this many, many times, is calling them the Red Tails. Now, the Red Tails is actually as being an honor to the Tuskegee Airmen, because one of the other nicknames that they had was the Red Tails because they painted the tails on their airplanes red. So if you've ever seen the movie Red Tails with Cuba Gooding Jr., you would know that too. But again, so I mean, there's lots of different options, and I guess we'll find out pretty soon about what the new logo and the new name will be, obviously before the 2020 season starts, which is about a month and a half, end of August, beginning of September. So yeah. Now, they're not going to be playing in front of thousands and thousands of people, but damn it, they're going to be seen on TV, so they need to be making sure that they have wearing something proper. But I guess we'll see what that happens on that. So my kudos out to the Washington, whatever you want to call them now, and their management, the Washington football team. Let's just call them the Washington football team, and their management for finally changing that name. And I swear to God, if I go online tonight and I see any motherfucker talking about, oh, you're changing history, or they shouldn't have changed. Oh, fuck you. God damn, I'm sick and tired of trolls. But if you feel the need to tweet at me, please do, because that will make you feel like a piece of shit. And if you're watching me live on TV or watching me on YouTube later, you'll see a big old smile on my face because you know that I love trolls. All right, guys, it's been a really fucking great night tonight. Great way to start off the fucking week. Let me tell you, Howard Bloom was an amazing man. And I cannot wait to see what he does next. We have a great week lined up for you. Tomorrow is going to be Soho Johnny, a philanthropist and a entertainer. He's also a real estate mogul as well. So I'll be having fun talking to him, learning some stuff about that. Wednesday is the former saxophonist for Pink Floyd and many other bands. Scott Page will be on the show. Thursday, we kick off the summer fucking concert series with Hooked Like Helen. Hooked Like Helen will be live on the air. We'll have a conversation with them, and then we'll put on an acoustic set for you guys live right here. And then Friday, Maktoum fucking model and actress Sherry Nelson will be on the show. So that'll be another good one. We've got a great week ahead of you. So please make sure you come back tomorrow night, 8 p.m. East, 5 p.m. West. Suck It Podcast live every fucking night on Twitch. We don't take breaks. We don't take fucking, mid-season finales here. We go all the goddamn time. And I will talk at you later. Y'all have a great rest of your fucking night. Talk to you tomorrow. Peace.